The alien observers monitoring the experiment became increasingly confused. Their sophisticated tracking systems could not comprehend how a seemingly primitive human team was beginning to understand and potentially control the simulation's core parameters. Captain Kong Wu's strategic thinking complemented Jae Sung's technical skills. Together, they began to predict and counter the simulation's challenges before they fully materialized. Their collaborative approach transformed potential threats into manageable scenarios. Dr. Eun-ji Kim noted the psychological transformation. The team's initial survival stress had evolved into a state of collective flow. Each member anticipated the other's needs. Communication became almost telepathic, with subtle gestures and glances replacing complex verbal explanations. Min Young Choi's role became increasingly critical. She maintained the team's emotional coherence, ensuring that their technical breakthrough didn't create internal competitive dynamics. Her leadership style emphasized collective achievement over individual recognition. The simulation seemed to respond to their manipulations. Challenges that were previously impossible became progressively more manageable. Energy resources became more accessible. Environmental conditions showed signs of stabilization. The team was no longer just surviving, they were beginning to thrive. Jae Sung's most significant discovery was yet to come. He found that the simulation's core programming contained recursive learning algorithms. By carefully introducing specific problem-solving approaches, they could potentially teach the simulation itself. Dr. Park realized they were doing something unprecedented. They weren't just solving the simulation's challenges, they were fundamentally changing its underlying logic. Each solution became a form of communication, a dialogue between human creativity and artificial complexity. As their manipulation of the system deepened, the alien observers watching the experiment began to realize something profound. The human team wasn't just surviving, they were demonstrating a unique form of intelligence that defied conventional understanding. The simulation was about to enter its most critical phase. And the humans were no longer just participants, they were becoming architects of their own survival. The final moments of the simulation arrived with an unexpected calm. Jae Sung Lee's fingers hovered over the last sequence of calculations, his eyes reflecting a deep understanding that transcended the artificial environment around them. The team had become something more than mere survivors, they had become masters of an impossible challenge. Dr. Park watched as the simulation's core systems began to respond differently. What was once a hostile environment now seemed to breathe with a kind of intelligent responsiveness. The team's collective intelligence had transformed the very fabric of the test itself. Captain Kong Wu stood at the edge of their makeshift command center, his military posture now relaxed but alert. He understood that they had achieved something far beyond mere survival. They had demonstrated a uniquely human capacity to adapt, transform, and ultimately overcome. Dr. Eun-ji Kim monitored the psychological state of the team. Their collective emotional landscape was unlike anything she had ever witnessed. Fear had long since been replaced by a profound sense of unity and purpose. Each team member was connected not just by survival, but by a deep understanding of human potential. Min Young Choi's community skills had become the glue that held their extraordinary achievement together. She had transformed their limited resources into a complex ecosystem of survival and innovation. Her approach had proven that human strength lies in collaboration, not individual competition. The simulation began to deconstruct itself, revealing layers of complexity that shocked the alien observers. What they had designed as an ultimate test of species survival had become something entirely different. The human team had not just survived, they had reimagined the very concept of survival. Jae Sung Lee's final breakthrough came in a moment of almost poetic simplicity. The complex algorithmic language of the simulation revealed itself as a form of communication. Where other species saw challenges, humans saw dialogue. Where others saw obstacles, they saw opportunities for understanding. Dr. Park realized they were experiencing something unprecedented in galactic history. The simulation was no longer just a test, it had become a conversation between human creativity and artificial intelligence. Each challenge had been transformed into a learning opportunity. The alien monitoring systems began to malfunction. Their sophisticated tracking technologies couldn't comprehend the fundamental transformation that was occurring. The human team had done more than survive, they had evolved the very parameters of the test. Captain Kong Wu's strategic thinking had proven that human adaptability was their most powerful weapon. Military precision combined with creative problem-solving had turned impossible challenges into manageable scenarios. Each obstacle became a stepping stone rather than a barrier. Dr. Eun Ji Kim observed the psychological miracle unfolding. The team's emotional intelligence had become their greatest strength. They had maintained hope where others would have surrendered. They had found unity in diversity, strength in vulnerability. Min Young Choi's final contribution was perhaps the most profound. She had ensured that their survival was not just about individual preservation, but about collective growth. Resources, knowledge, and emotional support had been shared with a level of sophistication that defied traditional survival strategies. As the simulation reached its final moments, something extraordinary happened. The artificial environment began to respond to the team's collective consciousness. Challenges that were previously unmanageable now seemed to anticipate their solutions. Jae Sung Lee completed his final calculation. The simulation's core systems began to dissolve, revealing a complex landscape of potential and possibility. They had not just survived, they had transformed the very concept of survival. The alien Galactic Confederation watching the experiment found themselves witnessing something beyond their most advanced predictions. The human team had demonstrated a form of intelligence that was both terrifyingly unpredictable and profoundly beautiful. Dr. Park looked at her team. They were exhausted, transformed, but unbroken. They had entered the simulation as individuals and emerged as something more, a testament to human potential, adaptability, and collective spirit. The simulation ended. But their real journey was just beginning. Humanity had passed the ultimate test. The vast emptiness of space hummed with an unusual transmission. Dr. Hyun Park stared at the holographic display, her fingers tracing the strange geometric patterns of the incoming message. The signal had originated from beyond known galactic boundaries, a communication that defied conventional understanding. The Galactic Confederation's invitation was unlike anything humanity had ever encountered. A simulation of extinction, a test that would push the boundaries of survival for every intelligent species in the known universe. Most alien civilizations viewed humans as a young, unpredictable species, barely capable of managing their own planet, let alone surviving a complex extraterrestrial challenge. In the research facility overlooking Seoul, Park assembled her team with careful consideration. Captain Kong Wu, a former military strategist with nerves of steel, stood quietly examining the initial data. His weathered hands moved across holographic screens, analyzing every minute detail of the transmission. Beside him, Dr. Eun Ji Kim reviewed psychological profiles, her sharp eyes catching nuanced details that others might miss. The simulation was more than a simple test. It was a comprehensive examination of species survival, a crucible that would strip away technological advantages and expose the core survival instincts of different civilizations. Preliminary reports suggested that most advanced species relied heavily on predetermined protocols and technological solutions. Humans, by contrast, were known for their unpredictability. "We're the wild card," Jae Sung Lee muttered, adjusting complex monitoring equipment. His fingers danced across quantum computing interfaces, mapping potential scenarios that might emerge during the test. The room buzzed with a mixture of excitement and nervous energy. Min Young Choi, their civilian representative, represented a different perspective. Where military and scientific minds saw a challenge, she saw an opportunity to demonstrate human spirit. Her background in community organization and social dynamics would prove crucial in understanding collective human behavior under extreme pressure. The Galactic Confederation had specific parameters. The simulation would create a virtual environment of total systemic collapse. Resources would gradually disappear. Environmental conditions would become increasingly hostile. Communication would be limited. Each participating species would be placed in identical starting conditions, with the goal of survival being the only metric of success. Preliminary briefings suggested that most alien civilizations expected humanity to fail quickly. Their technological capabilities were considered primitive. Their social structures appeared fragmented. Their biological limitations seemed significant compared to more advanced species with enhanced physiological capabilities. What the Confederation didn't understand was the human capacity for adaptation. Throughout their relatively short history, humans had survived ice ages, global conflicts, technological revolutions, and environmental challenges. They possessed an remarkable ability to reimagine survival when traditional methods failed. Dr. Park reviewed the final selection criteria. The team represented diverse backgrounds: military, scientific, psychological, technical, and civilian perspectives. Each member brought unique skills that could potentially complement or conflict with others. The beauty of human collaboration lay in their ability to transform individual differences into collective strength. The preparation phase was intense. Psychological evaluations, physical training, and complex simulation scenarios became their daily routine. They practiced communication protocols, survival techniques, and collaborative problem-solving under increasingly challenging conditions. Captain Conwo implemented tactical training that pushed traditional military thinking. Instead of rigid hierarchical approaches, he encouraged adaptive leadership. Every team member needed to be prepared to lead or follow, depending on the situation's requirements. Dr. Eun-ji Kim developed psychological resilience protocols that went beyond traditional stress management. She understood that survival wasn't just about physical endurance but mental flexibility. Her training focused on emotional intelligence, collective motivation, and the ability to maintain hope under extreme circumstances. As the launch date approached, a sense of quiet determination settled over the team. They weren't just representing humanity, they were about to demonstrate something fundamental about human potential. The Galactic Confederation would soon learn that humanity was far more complex than any preliminary assessment could capture. The transmission blinked. The final confirmation arrived. They were ready to enter the ultimate test of survival. The simulation materialized around the human team like a living nightmare. Endless darkness stretched in every direction, punctuated by faint, cold points of light that offered no real warmth. Their initial environment was a barren landscape of metallic gray terrain and thin, toxic atmosphere that would have killed any unprotected biological entity within minutes. Captain Conwo immediately activated the team's protective gear, his movements precise and calculated. Their equipment, designed for extreme conditions, became their first line of defense. Each team member carried limited resources, enough for theoretical survival, but not enough to provide long-term comfort. Dr. Eun-ji Kim monitored the psychological state of the group. She recognized the intentional design of the environment. It was meant to break their spirit before physical challenges could test their resilience. The landscape was deliberately disorienting, with optical illusions that made distance and direction impossible to determine accurately. Jae-sung Lee began scanning the environment, his technical expertise searching for any potential advantages. His quantum sensors picked up subtle energy signatures that suggested the simulation was more complex than a simple survival scenario. Something was watching them, analyzing their every move. Min Young Choi took inventory of their collective resources. Unlike other species that might have panicked, she remained calm, systematically organizing their limited supplies. Her civilian perspective saw opportunity where others might see hopelessness. The first challenge came quickly. Their communication systems began to degrade, creating intermittent static and partial signal loss. Dr. Park realized this was intentional. The simulation was testing their ability to communicate and coordinate under increasingly difficult conditions. Water became their first critical problem. The atmospheric moisture was technically present but completely undrinkable. Their initial water supplies were limited to exactly 72 hours of consumption. The message was clear: adapt or perish. Temperature fluctuations became extreme. Within moments, the environment could shift from freezing cold to burning heat, challenging their protective equipment and personal endurance. Each team member had to constantly adjust their personal environmental controls, a task that required continuous attention and collective cooperation. The alien designers of the simulation had carefully studied human limitations. They understood human physical constraints but dramatically underestimated their psychological adaptability. What seemed like an impossible scenario to other species became a problem-solving challenge for the human team. Jae-Sung Lee discovered the first hack. By recalibrating their equipment's quantum frequency, he could momentarily predict environmental shifts. It wasn't a complete solution, but it gave them a critical advantage. Where other species might have waited for a comprehensive solution, humans were willing to work with partial advantages. Dr. Park watched the team's interactions carefully. Traditional military teams might have fallen into strict hierarchical responses. Instead, leadership became fluid. When Kongwoo's technical understanding reached its limit, Jae-Sung Lee would take point. When psychological stress became overwhelming, Dr. Kim would guide the group's emotional response. Their first collective decision came naturally. Instead of dividing their limited resources, they chose to share everything. Water, food, technical capabilities all became communal. This approach would have been considered weak by most alien species, who typically prioritized individual survival. The simulation began introducing additional challenges. Communication became more restricted. Their equipment started showing signs of gradual degradation. Random energy pulses would temporarily disable specific technological systems, forcing them to develop manual backup strategies. Min Young Choi's community organization skills became unexpectedly crucial. She developed a rotation system for equipment maintenance, ensuring that no single team member became overwhelmed. Her approach transformed their limited resources into a sustainable survival strategy. As hours turned into days, the human team didn't just survive, they began to understand the simulation's underlying logic. Each challenge was a test, not just of physical endurance, but of collective problem-solving and emotional resilience. The alien observers watching the simulation began to realize something remarkable was happening. The human team wasn't just responding to challenges, they were actively reimagining survival itself. The real test was just beginning. The simulation entered its most challenging phase, pushing the human team to their absolute limits. Their initial survival strategies had worked, but now the environment became increasingly complex and hostile. Dr. Eun-ji Kim noticed something extraordinary happening within the team's psychological dynamics. Where most species would have begun to fracture under extreme stress, the humans were growing stronger. Their individual differences became strengths rather than weaknesses. Captain Kongwoo's military precision combined with Jae-Sung Lee's technical creativity produced unexpected solutions. When their primary communication systems failed completely, they developed a complex hand signal system that allowed near-instantaneous communication. Each gesture, each subtle movement became a language of survival. Min Young Choi discovered a critical insight. Their limited resources could be stretched through innovative sharing techniques. She developed a rotation system where equipment, food, and energy resources were continuously redistributed. No single team member became a weak link. The simulation introduced environmental challenges that would have destroyed other species instantly. Radiation levels spiked unpredictably. Gravitational fields fluctuated, making movement a constant challenge. Temperature variations could change from absolute zero to extreme heat within seconds. Jae-Sung Lee's technical skills became their primary advantage. He began to understand the simulation's underlying algorithmic patterns. What seemed like random challenges were actually carefully constructed tests of adaptability. Each obstacle contained a hidden logic that could be decoded and anticipated. Dr. Park observed the team's transformation. They were no longer just surviving, they were learning to thrive in impossible conditions. Their communication became more nuanced. A simple look could now convey complex information. Their body language evolved into a sophisticated survival language. The alien observers monitoring the simulation became increasingly confused. Other species had failed within hours. The human team not only survived but seemed to gain strength from each challenge. Their collective intelligence was proving to be their most powerful weapon. Unexpected leadership emerged naturally. When technical challenges appeared, Jae-Sung Lee would take charge. During psychological stress, Dr. Kim guided the team's emotional response. Physical challenges saw Captain Kongwoo's strategic thinking come to the forefront. Water became their most critical resource. Their initial supplies had long since been exhausted. Using Jae-Sung Lee's technical modifications, they developed a makeshift condensation system that could extract microscopic moisture from the seemingly dry environment. Where other species would have given up, humans saw an opportunity for innovation. Food became another challenge. Their initial supplies were gone. Min Young Choi developed a complex nutritional rotation system. They learned to process minimal organic materials into basic sustenance. Each team member understood that individual survival depended on collective effort. The simulation began introducing psychological warfare elements. Communication became increasingly restricted. Random energy pulses would temporarily disable their equipment. Isolation techniques designed to break their spirit seemed to have the opposite effect. Dr. Eun Ji Kim recognized the psychological strategy. The simulation was testing not just their physical survival, but their collective mental resilience. Instead of creating fear, these challenges seemed to strengthen their resolve. Captain Kong Woo's military training revealed itself in subtle ways. He ensured that rest and recovery were as strategically planned as survival techniques. Each team member knew exactly when to work and when to recover, maintaining optimal performance. Jae-Sung Lee's continuous equipment modifications became their secret weapon. He could transform seemingly useless technological fragments into critical survival tools. A broken communication device became a heat generator. Damaged protective gear was repurposed into water collection systems. As days turned into what felt like endless challenges, the human team's spirit remained unbroken. They laughed together. They supported each other. Their humanity became their greatest strength. The alien observers watching the simulation began to realize they were witnessing something unprecedented. The human team wasn't just surviving, they were redefining the very concept of survival. The simulation was about to enter its most critical phase. And the humans were ready. The simulation reached a critical turning point when Jae-Sung Lee discovered something extraordinary. Hidden within the complex algorithmic structure, he found subtle patterns that suggested the entire system could be manipulated. Where other species would have seen an impenetrable challenge, he saw an opportunity. Dr. Park watched carefully as Jae-Sung began his intricate work. His fingers moved rapidly across improvised technical interfaces, breaking down the simulation's core programming language. Each movement was calculated, each decision precise. The rest of the team understood that this was more than just survival, it was a complete reimagining of their circumstances. Captain Kong Woo provided strategic support, creating a protective perimeter around Jae-Sung's work area. His military training ensured that no unexpected challenge could interrupt the critical technical exploration. The team functioned like a single organism, each member understanding their precise role. Dr. Eun Ji Kim monitored the psychological impact of their discovery. The team's hope was transforming into something more powerful, a collective belief that they could not just survive, but fundamentally change their environment. Her psychological observations revealed a remarkable human trait, the ability to transform limitations into opportunities. Min Young Choi's community organization skills became crucial. She helped distribute the cognitive load, ensuring that while Jae-Sung worked on technical solutions, others maintained their survival systems. Water collection, resource management, and equipment maintenance continued without interruption. The simulation began responding to their manipulations in unexpected ways. Energy fields that were previously hostile started showing signs of responsiveness. Random environmental challenges became more predictable. The team realized they were no longer just surviving, they were learning to communicate with the simulation itself.